You know, it's a curious thing how often we imagine that our lives are troubled by enemies, rivals, or the occasional naysayer lurking in the shadows, when, in fact, most people who seem disturbed by your success are not really responding to you at all. They're responding to a mirror. And mirrors, as you may have noticed, can be very uncomfortable things. Imagine for a moment that you're walking along a quiet garden path at dusk. The light is soft, the air still. You feel calm, at ease. Then suddenly you turn a corner and come upon a pond. A perfectly still pond, reflecting you with an honesty you did not ask for. Now, if you've been avoiding yourself, if you've been running from some unresolved trembling inside, that reflection can feel like an intrusion, even an attack. You might blame the water. Why must it show me this? But the water is innocent, and so are you. Those who recoil at your success, your joy, your awakening, do so because something in you has stirred, something sleeping or suffocating in them. It is not your brightness they resent, but the shadow that brightness reveals. Let's begin there. Because you see, the shadow is not evil. It's not some dark villain crouching in the caverns of the psyche. It's simply everything we have not yet learned to hold with tenderness. Everything we've pushed away, buried, disowned. The shadow is the unaccepted self. And when someone sees you blooming, they are suddenly confronted with their own withering. Now, the paradox is this. They may never admit it. They may accuse, criticize, or withdraw with a mysterious frostiness. They may pretend they're above such petty emotions, but their tone, their silence, their small, sharp edges of behavior will tell the truth. It is the discomfort of the mirror. When you rise, whether in confidence, creativity, love, or any form of success, you do something very dangerous. You disturb the old arrangement. You stop colluding with the smallness that once made you safe to others. You become unpredictable, alive. And the moment you do that, you awaken in others the fear that they too were meant to rise and didn't. This is the true source of resentment, not jealousy, but grief. The grief of an unlived life. Now, many people imagine that spiritual development, psychological insight, or the simple act of being a kind human being should magically remove these frictions. But life is not obliged to be neat. It is a grand, swirling sea of interdependence. And when the tide of your being changes, the shoreline of others shifts whether they wish it or not. Think of a forest. When one tree grows tall, reaching toward the sun, its presence subtly alters the light around it. The other trees must adjust. Some are nourished, inspired to rise. Others feel overshadowed and contract. The tall tree is not to blame. It is simply fulfilling its nature. But its existence triggers a reorganization of the whole. Your success, my dear listener, is that tall tree. And the reactions you provoke are nothing personal. They are simply part of the ecology of human consciousness. But still it hurts, doesn't it? It hurts when someone you love winces at your joy, or makes a quiet jab when you celebrate a small victory. It hurts when your growth becomes a scandal, a disappointment, or a threat to those who once believed they knew you. It is painful when your rising disrupts the fragile balance other people were depending on to avoid confronting themselves. And yet, there is something profoundly beautiful about this discomfort, if you look closely. For every person who resents your success, there is another who is liberated by it. For every shadow stirred, a light awakens. You are not responsible for whether someone chooses light or shadow. You are only responsible for being true. This is the essence of freedom. Now you may ask, why must my joy provoke such turmoil in others? Why can't people simply be happy for me? Well, perhaps the universe is far more playful than we give it credit for. Perhaps life insists that we learn not to depend on the approval of others. To stand as the pond stands, reflective, still, unbothered by the face that gazes into it. Because the moment your happiness requires unanimous celebration from the people around you, it is no longer happiness, it is hostage-taking. The truth, the gentle truth, is that most people don't dislike your success at all. They dislike the feeling of being left behind, or being reminded of their own hesitation, or realizing that the image they held of you was more about their comfort than your truth. Your growth threatens the stories they told themselves. And stories, as you know, can be very fragile things. But let us go deeper into this shadow, because within it lies a treasure hidden by centuries of human misunderstanding. Now, let us wander a little further into the forest of this matter, quietly, gently. as though stepping on sacred ground, because whenever we speak of the shadow, we are speaking of the most intimate, trembling corners of the human heart. The shadow, you see, is not merely the part of ourselves we hide, it is also the part we do not yet understand. It is the unplayed note in the symphony of our being. And when you succeed, when you shine, when you dare to dance with the music of your own life, you strike that note in others, even if they do not wish to hear it. You remind them, without trying, of the melody they abandoned, the courage they postponed, the freedom they feared might cost them too much. And so, quite unconsciously, they turn away from you, not because of who you are, but because of the echo they hear inside. This is why criticism often sounds louder than praise, why someone who barely knows you may feel strangely irritated by your enthusiasm, why old friends may grow quiet just when you feel most alive. They are wrestling with themselves, but they imagine they're wrestling with you. It is as though your life has become a tuning fork, vibrating with possibility. Some will resonate with you, harmonizing effortlessly. Others will feel the vibration as a disturbance, a reminder that they too were meant to sing, but have been living on mute. Now, I must tell you something rather radical. You are not required to dim your light to soothe another's unlit candle, because the moment you do that, you join them in the dark, and then neither of you can see. You do not heal someone's shadow by shrinking. You do not soothe their discomfort by returning to an old, smaller version of yourself. That only reinforces the illusion that something is wrong with expansion. In truth, life is a continual unfolding, a blossoming, a bursting forth, and each of us is invited to open in our own way, in our own season. Your success, your growth, your awakening is neither a boast nor an accident. It is simply your time to bloom. But those who resist your blooming are not villains. They are merely frightened gardeners of their own garden, unsure what might grow if they loosen their grip on the soil. Let us be compassionate with them, because deep down, every one of us carries the fear of not being enough. And when someone rises, especially someone close, that fear stirs. The mind whispers, "Why not you? Why haven't you changed? What if you are falling behind in the great race of life?" But of course, there is no race. There is only the unfolding of consciousness in its countless forms. Still, the fear feels real. And fear, when left unexamined, often disguises itself as hostility. Picture a person standing in a dark room. They have been there so long they have grown comfortable with the shadows, comfortable with the familiar outlines of their limitations. Then suddenly a door swings open, and light floods in. What is their first reaction? Not gratitude, not relief, not joy. It is pain, because the eyes ache when they first meet the light. And if the person does not understand that the pain is part of the adjustment, part of the expansion, they may curse the light bringer. They will say, "Close the door." They will clutch the shadow like an old blanket, believing that comfort and safety are the same thing. But you are that open door. You did not intend to be. You did not apply for the position. You simply grew, and your growth broke the seal on someone else's darkness. Now, an interesting question arises. Should you close the door for their sake? The intuitive, polite part of you may say yes. But the wiser part, the part aligned with the rhythm of the universe, knows the answer is no. For by keeping the door open, you offer them the possibility of walking through it when they are ready. You do not force them. You do not drag them. You simply keep shining in a way that whispers, "Here is another way." This is the true meaning of compassion. Compassion is not shrinking so others can avoid discomfort. Compassion is standing bright enough that others can find their way when darkness becomes too heavy to carry. And you must understand that many people will find their way, eventually. Your presence will irritate them at first, then challenge them, then over time inspire them. The very people who distance themselves from you now may later on return with gratitude, saying, "Your growth gave me permission to grow." But not all will. And that, too, is part of the dance. Every soul moves at its own pace. Every consciousness unfolds in its own spiral. You are not here to accelerate or delay anyone else's journey. You are simply here to journey honestly. This honesty, this authenticity is what stirs the shadow in others. And it may stir yours as well. For the more you shine, the more you confront the parts of yourself that once preferred to hide. Your success does not only provoke others, it provokes you. It asks you to step beyond the familiar boundaries of identity. to live without apology, to admit without shame that you are capable of more than you previously allowed. This can be terrifying because success, real success, is not the accumulation of achievements. It is the willingness to be fully alive, and to be fully alive is to risk being misunderstood. Now, let us continue our exploration into what happens inside you when others react to your rise. Because, you see, there is another dimension to this whole affair, one far more subtle, far more intimate, and that is what happens within you when others recoil at your growth. For it is not only their shadow that awakens. Yours does too. When someone seems unsettled by your success, a faint tremor may rise in your own chest. You might wonder, did I go too far? Am I being selfish? Should I slow down so others feel comfortable again? These questions do not come from wisdom. They come from the old conditioning, the ancient fear that belonging is safer than becoming. But belonging, when it requires self-abandonment, is not belonging at all. It is a quiet form of death. Somewhere in you lives the child who learned that love must be earned by being small, agreeable, unimposing. The child who learned that shining too brightly might attract envy, rejection, or punishment. And so when you rise now as an adult, as a soul expanding into its full dimension, that child becomes frightened. It whispers, hide. Don't upset anyone. Don't make them see you. This is your inner shadow speaking. Not the monstrous, mythical shadow people sometimes imagine, but the soft, wounded one, the one who longs to be seen yet fears the consequences of being visible. And when others project their discomfort onto you, this inner child feels confirmed in its suspicions. See? They don't like who you are becoming. It isn't safe. But adulthood, real adulthood, is learning to hold the hand of this frightened part and walk forward anyway. Success is not about outgrowing your shadow, but about integrating it, taking it with you on the journey rather than letting it steer the ship. Now, imagine this. You are walking through a vast, ancient temple. Sunlight filters through high windows, illuminating dust particles that drift like tiny stars. In the center stands a large bronze bell, silent yet potent. A monk approaches, takes a wooden mallet, and strikes the bell. It rings deep, resonant, impossible to ignore. Your success is that bell. Your awakening is that sound. But remember, the bell does not apologize for ringing. It does not ring timidly, nor does it ring with arrogance. It simply rings because that is its nature. Its resonance fills the temple, and everything in the space responds to it in its own way. Some things vibrate harmoniously, others rattle. Some remain still. This is not the bell's decision. This is simply how sound behaves. And so it is with you. The question is not whether others will rattle when you ring. The question is whether you will stop ringing because of it. Now, we would be wise to acknowledge something else. People rarely understand their discomfort immediately. They might blame you for changing. They might accuse you, subtly or bluntly, of abandoning them, of becoming too much, or too different, or too full of yourself. But what they really mean is, I do not yet know how to meet the version of you that no longer excuses your own power. They are meeting the real you. And that can be a shock, because your authenticity exposes their performance. Your aliveness exposes their numbness. Your clarity exposes their confusion. Not by intention, but by contrast. And human beings, as you may have noticed, often prefer a comforting confusion to a confronting truth. But here is the great relief. It is not your responsibility to manage the inner weather of other people. The clouds that gather or part in their mind's sky do so according to their own climate, their upbringing, their fears, their hopes, their unrealized longings. You may trigger a storm, but the storm is theirs. It was brewing long before you arrived. Let them weather it. For storms cleanse. Storms reveal. Storms break open the soil so something new may take root. And if a relationship is true, anchored not in mutual limitation, but in mutual recognition, it will evolve with you. Those who are meant to journey with you will adjust their sails, feel the wind of your becoming, and say, so this is the next chapter. Very well, let's see where it leads. But let us be honest, some will not. Some relationships were built not on truth, but on shared wounds. And when one wound heals before the other, the bond weakens. This is not a failure. It is a natural dissolution, like snow melting in spring. Nothing that is real can be lost. Nothing that is false can be held together. Now, you may ask, but what should I do? How should I respond to those who resent my success? The answer is neither simple nor complicated. It is natural. You respond with presence, not defensiveness, not apology, not shrinking, nor with arrogance, rebellion, or theatrical independence. Presence. You continue to walk your path with sincerity. You do not brag, but neither do you hide. You do not force your light onto others, but neither do you dim it. You simply allow your being to unfold, like a flower that does not ask permission before opening. And perhaps that is the best metaphor of all. The flower. A rose does not measure whether the daisies feel insecure. The lotus does not shrink because the reeds remain small. The forest does not negotiate its height. It all simply grows. It grows because growth is the law of life. And life, dear listener, does not apologize for living. But let us continue, for there is a still deeper layer, the one that reveals not only how to live with the shadow of others, but how to transmute it. Let us now step into a subtler chamber of this exploration, the alchemy of the shadow, the art of transforming what seems like hostility or rejection into something surprisingly luminous. You see, when someone bristles at your success, when they wince at your joy, or subtly withdraw as you blossom, they are unknowingly offering you a very rare mirror, one that reveals not only their hidden fears, but your hidden attachments. Every reaction you receive from another has the potential to show you where you still seek permission to exist. For instance, suppose someone who once supported you now appears annoyed or threatened. If this stirs anxiety in you, it means that part of your happiness was still dependent on their approval. If you feel guilty for growing, it means some fragment of your identity still believes that shining is a burden to others. If you feel the urge to explain yourself, I didn't mean to succeed so much. I didn't intend to surpass you. That is the voice of the old self, the self that once survived by minimizing its own presence. Yet the deeper self, the wiser self, knows something else entirely. It knows that joy does not belong to anyone. It knows that success is not a possession but a flow. It knows that life moves through you, not for you to hoard or disguise. And so the first alchemical step is to recognize what arises within you when others resist your growth. To notice without judgment, without defensiveness, without collapsing back into the smaller shape you once occupied. Now, here comes the paradox, and it is a beautiful one. The people who cannot stand your success are often unconsciously pushing you toward freedom. They are showing you where your identity was still entangled with their validation. They are pointing, with their discomfort, to the places where you still felt responsible for their self-esteem. They are demonstrating how deeply you once molded yourself to avoid triggering anyone else's shadow. Their rejection, their unease, their criticism. These are the chisels life uses to sculpt you into something more authentic. Imagine a sculptor working on a block of marble. To the untrained eye, the chisel strikes seem violent, unnecessary, even destructive. But the sculptor sees differently. Each strike removes only what was never meant to remain. Each impact reveals a form that was always waiting to emerge. Your encounters with others' shadows work the same way. Every time someone resents your expansion, a small slice of unnecessary identity is chipped away. A piece of guilt, a piece of fear, a piece of people-pleasing, a piece of shame for daring to be yourself. Slowly, you are carved into the shape of someone who no longer apologizes for existing. This, you see, is liberation. But liberation is rarely comfortable. It is like stepping out of an ill-fitting coat you wore for years, a coat that kept you warm but restricted your movement. When you remove it, you may feel a chill at first, a vulnerability, a strange nakedness. But then the air touches your skin, and you remember what it means to move freely. Now, let us examine something rather delicate. When someone feels threatened by your success, they may not behave kindly. They may criticize you, gossip about you, or withdraw in subtle ways. Their shadow may express itself through sarcasm, coldness, or insinuations. And the instinctive reaction is to defend yourself. But defense is unnecessary. Why? Because their reaction is not about the truth of who you are, it is about the discomfort of who they fear they are not. Truth needs no defense. It simply is. When a lighthouse stands on a cliff, shining into the night, the ships do not accuse it of arrogance. Some ships will steer toward the light with gratitude, using it as guidance. Others, lost in fog or confusion, may drift in the opposite direction. But the lighthouse does not concern itself with which ships approve. It shines because that is its purpose. You are that lighthouse. But here is the more tender realization. Those who resent your success are often people who are unconsciously longing for permission to grow. They see in you a possibility they have not yet dared to claim. Their discomfort is the early tremor of awakening. In time, though not always, and not necessarily through your direct influence, they may rise as well. And when they do, you may find that the person who once resisted you becomes the one who most deeply understands you, for they have felt the shadow and walked through it. They know the sting of the mirror, and they know the beauty that lies beyond the sting. But whether they awaken or not does not concern you. Your task is not to inspire, convince, or rescue anyone. Your task is to live your life with sincerity, to walk your path with gentleness and conviction, to allow your being to expand without apology, to remain rooted in your own center even as the winds of others' reactions swirl around you. And now we arrive at the most profound insight of this entire exploration. Your success is not a threat to anyone. Your success is an invitation for others to meet themselves, an invitation for you to meet yourself, an invitation for consciousness to stretch its limbs and remember its own possibilities. In the end, those who cannot stand your success are simply standing at the doorway of their own potential, confused, frightened, hesitant. And the greatest gift you can offer them is to walk through your own doorway with calmness, proving by example that nothing terrible happens when you dare to be fully alive. Now, let us bring this journey home into a final meditation on what it means to live peacefully, gracefully, and freely among the shadows of the world. And so, let us draw the threads together, not by tightening them into a neat conclusion, but by allowing them to fall naturally into place, like leaves settling on a still pond. For the heart of this matter is not merely how others respond to your success, it is how you respond to their response. It is how you hold yourself in the subtle tension between shining and being seen. It is whether you recoil from your own expansion, or relax into it as one relaxes into warm water. To live freely among those who fear your growth is a delicate art. It is the art of neither shrinking nor flaunting, the art of neither hiding nor performing, the art of being neither superior nor submissive. It is the art of being simply, quietly, unshakably yourself. Now, imagine again that pond we spoke of at the very beginning, the one that reflected your face with such startling honesty. If you stand before it anxiously, you will see only distortions. Anxiety is like wind. It ripples the surface, bending the truth. But if you approach with a calm heart, the reflection grows clear. Not perfect, perhaps, but true. Your success is that calm pond. Your being is the reflection it offers. But you must learn to let the water be still, even when others throw stones into it. For people will intentionally or not toss their fears, their judgments, their projections like small pebbles into your calmness. And each pebble creates ripples, distortions, tremors. Yet the pond does not leap out to grab the stone and demand an apology. It simply returns to stillness. That is your practice. To return to stillness, not by force, not by discipline, not by suppressing emotion, but by remembering that the disturbances are temporary, while your essence is not. Now, let me tell you something that might surprise you. The shadow others see in your success is often the very doorway to your deeper compassion. For when you understand their inner struggle, truly understand it, not intellectually, but in your bones, you can meet their resistance with a gentleness that comes from knowing their pain is universal. You can say, without words, I see your discomfort. I recognize that place. I have known it too. Because you have known it. Every human being has. We have all felt the sting of another's light. We have all compared ourselves, judged ourselves, shrunk from our own potential. We have all at some point resented someone who dared to become what we secretly wished to be. And so, paradoxically, understanding the shadow in others leads to a deeper understanding of your own humanity. It softens you. It humbles you. It opens your heart in ways success alone never could. This is the final alchemy. Turning resentment into compassion. Turning discomfort into clarity. Turning the shadow into insight. Now, let us imagine once more, for images have a way of saying what words cannot, that you are walking at dawn along the edge of the ocean. The sky is pale blue, the sun just cresting over the horizon. The tide is low, and the wet sand glistens like polished glass. As you walk, you notice your reflection in the sand, shimmering, elongated, almost dreamlike. Each step you take distorts the reflection, breaking it into ripples of light. But the moment you lift your foot, the sand smooths itself again. It holds your reflection only momentarily, then releases it. This is how life dances with your identity. It reflects you for a moment, then lets you go. It never holds you tightly, never freezes you into a fixed image. But people often try to freeze others. They build mental portraits, stories, assumptions. And when you change, those frozen portraits crack. The cracking is loud, startling, unpleasant. And rather than update their image of you, some people cling to the old one, insisting this is who you are, even as you walk away from that version of yourself. Let them cling. Let them misunderstand. Let them keep their broken portraits. For the truth of who you are does not live in their minds. It lives in your unfolding. And that unfolding is sacred. Now, as we bring this meditation to a close, I invite you to breathe not metaphorically, but actually feel your chest rise and fall. Feel the air pass through you effortlessly, without effort or control. That breath is your true nature. Always moving, always changing, always returning. Your success is just another breath of the universe, exhaled through you. And if some people dislike the sound of your breathing because it reminds them of their own held breath, that is not your concern. You were not born to suffocate yourself for the comfort of others. So let this be the final whisper of this journey. You do not need permission to expand. You do not need approval to shine. You do not need agreement to evolve. The people who cannot stand your success are simply unready to meet the parts of themselves your light illuminates. Let them be unready. And you go on. Go on growing. Go on awakening. Go on becoming the vast, unbounded expression of life that you already are. And may your rising be gentle, fearless, and free. Not in defiance of anyone, but in devotion to the truth of your own being.